Wow, I never thought that I would be making this video just purely in reference to my building criteria. I was amazed. I blew this guy's mind. Do you see how blown his mind is right now? He's going crazy. I have built the most iconic tank of the Second World War, the American M4 Sherman. Isn't she beautiful? This was quite a lot of planning, quite a lot of testing. Because I was worried that I wouldn't be able to build this tank, or at least in a way that was somewhat reasonable. But I put a lot of really hard work into this, and here she is. Give the old usual spin around, and then we'll get into specifics. Before anybody asks, I will be making tutorials for this Sherman. This is a fairly decent, proportionally to a Lego guy, as a Sherman is and is supposed to be. So if people have any interest in making my Sherman or using my Sherman, I support that. And there, like I said, will be tutorials. People can build my Sherman if they would like to. But yeah, so I'm gonna pull off the accessories as per usual, and we're gonna look at kind of just the design of the tank and sort of how I went about coming and making this very, very iconic tank. I know in light of how glorious this tank is, people probably don't really care, but in case anyone noticed, I did fix my light just a little bit. I kind of shifted it around. I think it's okay. We're just trying a different lighting system for this video, and hopefully it all works out. So before we get to the actual tank, because naturally I did a lot of hard work on that, I'll just do a quick run over of sort of the little accessories I have. They're nothing tremendously interesting. I have a little bucket and a hammer, various pieces of little brushed for camouflage, you know, and a ditching bar, pretty much classic stuff, little parcels and machine gun ammo maybe. But I don't know, it's not tremendously complicated. They're just tiny things that really liven up the tank and make it a lot more interesting than sort of the gray hull, because I couldn't really find myself getting out of the pit of using gray, because a lot of people use gray to build tank hulls because there's no better options. There's not enough specific kind of Lego pieces supplied in like this really interesting olive green color or forest green or any other, you know, things that would be reasonable. And camouflage is really tricky too. So I did make mine gray. That was not my favorite part of this, but I did indeed build it gray, and I think it looks okay just based off of, you know, what I could do with Legos, because it always is changed based on my criteria. So here it is. This is the M4 Sherman. This I designed this not to be in a specific scale. I don't know the scales that well, but I intentionally tried to make one that was more realistically proportioned than any others that I've seen, because I've seen quite a few of these. And I definitely was inspired by what other people have done, but I didn't think it was very useful to make it very large. So I attempted to make it small. So I think it's okay considering that it's small. Smaller means there's less detail, and I try to work really hard for like interiors and stuff and functionality, which only gets harder the smaller you get. So that was a kind of a dangerous road to walk, because I kind of had to sort of lean in different directions, deciding about, do I want this to be appropriately sized, or I want it to function, or whatever. Because like when I built another historical tank, like my Saint-Chamond tank, for example, which was iconically big, but also I made it bigger than it was supposed to be. It was because I could get a lot of functionality in it, and I got moving guns and opening doors and stuff. This one, I tried really hard to incorporate those details, but also walk a fine line between like trying to make it the appropriate size for a minifigure, so it's at least somewhat believable and it's not too like ridiculously large, because that's kind of the thing people suffer from when they build stuff like this. So yeah, this is my M4 Sherman. The wheels took quite a while to sort of math out. I did them very, very intentionally. I worked on them really, really hard. It was a long period of problem solving. But again, I kind of decided that like in context of my other new tanks, mostly with the Tide Trundler that I built, because I just built that one, I was thinking that I wanted to make one that was like a tank in general that was just simpler. So I tried to take the simpler designs I have from making smaller tanks now, and this is built actually very similarly in style to the Tide Trundler, in case anyone has seen that tank that I also built. But that one also didn't have the historical aspect to it. So there were a couple different layers of trying to make it functional, but also historical. So I have the gear in the front here that's like the driving gear naturally. There's supposed to be a wheel back here and not a gear, but I didn't want these tracks not to roll. So I worked really hard on that. This is the same wheel system, a very, very similar wheel system as my Tide Trundler and my Plover tank, because it worked so well. So this rolls gloriously. I can't even begin to explain how well this rolls. It's beautifully, beautifully done. And I try not to pat myself on the back too much when it comes to that, but it works so incredibly well. And it looks like the M4 Sherman wheels. So I did the 6 road wheels with the little road wheel holders on both sides are the same. But then the only thing I had changed was this gear right here, so that it would indeed function and it wouldn't just grind on another Lego piece. So that was that. Fairly simple design. These are a little bit yellowed because I have some older Legos, but they all do the same thing. Just, again, it's very, very kind of stupid simple when it came to this. The wheels work incredibly well. They stick out in the front and they're hidden in the back, kind of like the M4 Sherman actually is. And I just think they look great. They look great. They function great. I love these thin treads. I'm thinking about getting some more and maybe making more Shermans, or I'm considering other World War II tanks now. But yeah, they look good. They work well, which was one of my main criteria was I would prefer to have it work well than to have it be super historically accurate. So that was just what I did with that. Same with the front here. I wanted the front to just function as the front of the tank and not be like super, super defined. Naturally, if I could get it more defined, I would, but I didn't really bother with that because I didn't want to ruin the functionality part of it. So the block, like the front of this thing is a little blocky. It's like not awesome. I did kind of a welded plate on the front here for storage. I didn't even really put a machine gun in the machine gun hole. I could, or you could just imagine there's one in there. It doesn't really matter to me. There's a couple different things like that that kind of were interchanged on Shermans and stuff. So I thought it was okay. Just small details to not go overboard. So yeah, so the front's not as rolled as I might like it. I might make modifications to it, but this is my initial Sherman hull, which actually means I could do a lot of different vehicle variants if I wanted, because I was considering maybe doing like a Calliope or a Crab or a like a Sherman bulldozer or any of the other variants once I have a Sherman tank. So this was the Sherman hull. This was the first reiteration of it. So it's just here for reference and stuff. So the front's pretty simple. It just covers up the front and naturally just does what it needs to do. It's not more defined than that. And I left studs on these too because I wanted like functionality, and I want to be able to stack sandbags or brush or different, you know, I have these little little parcels right here to kind of just be able to stack on there and just use it as storage. So I thought that was pretty good. I made the two driver doors. They both open, the driver and the assistant driver. They both open and they both function extremely well, but the inside of the tank doesn't lend itself well too much to actually having like an actual driver here and a driver there, because the tank is ridiculously thin in contrast to what it takes to like fit a minifigure in there. But I think it looks good. It looks really good from the outside. It looks okay on the inside, in my opinion. I'll get to the turret here. It kind of just pops off. Very, very simple little just rotator on there. And it's kind of complex on the bottom. I was really happy with the shaping. When I started building this Sherman, I actually, I started with the turret, which was not a great idea because I needed to measure out wheels first. But I started with the turret, and this is not the turret I ended up using. I made a new one. The other one I had made was too big. But here is the Sherman turret. I think it looks pretty good. I have some very small details like this little ventilation piece and the hatches and stuff. And again, I really wanted it to, first and foremost, to look like the Sherman, and then wanted to play with some functionality. So the mantlet and the gun actually moves up and down, which is delightful. And this hatch actually opens too. And you can't like cram a whole guy in there, but there is indeed a spot where you can take a man, like a commander, and you can just kind of sit him in the top, which is nice. And it kind of just adds to, you know, to play features and stuff. It makes it a little more interesting than just having a closed bit. Funnily enough, this sort of cupola piece, or this little tower, it's so thick. It's like literally a brick thick coming off, but it looks okay closed. It looks okay open. It's not terrible. And then I did a little 50 caliber on the back of this because I really wanted to just have little features. This is one of my favorite parts. Just a little stuff like that. I wanted to do another Browning on the front or something, but I just didn't bother with that. But I really could. There's a lot of room for modification here, and I really, really like that. So yeah, it's good. I added a white stripe. There's some Sherman tanks that were kind of striped like that. I didn't find any specific markings I like, and I'm not much for custom stickers. And I wanted to just sort of break up the shape and not make it all gray. So that's kind of just what I did for the turret to make it not too tremendously boring, I guess. Funnily enough, when I was building the hull, I kind of went about it similarly how the actual Sherman was designed in real life, in which it was sort of like the simpler and more effective that you could do it, the better. So I didn't really, I didn't overthink it too much. I kind of just made a very simple slanted back that is indeed welded. So like the edges aren't rounded or anything. It's kind of like has more pointed edges like a welded Sherman as opposed to a cast one that's more rounded. But that's a really, really hard thing to achieve. So I just kind of said, hey, let's pick an easy route, but still make something that's iconic. And I think it turned out okay. I like it a lot. It has a nice distance. I think it has a nice sort of track spacing, and just sort of comparatively to everything else. And it's not too tremendously big. Like, I don't know, maybe I have big hands, but it's not that large. And in contrast to a Lego guy, like, he stands somewhat appropriately as far as the height of the thing goes, which I'm really proud of the scale of it too. And I don't, like I said, I don't know scales that well or what you would want for something like this, but I think it's pretty decent considering most Shermans that people build in Lego are big, and they have to be big so that they work well. But I don't know, this is just my specific design. I did a little engine compartment in the back here with the opening doors. Naturally, they don't open on this, but it has little doors and little hooks and stuff. And I thought it was pretty nice. I achieved kind of a nice effect with that, with being able to use this angled piece and sort of just clamp it down and cover that. I think the back is probably my favorite part of this, that and the little 50 caliber machine gun. But I think it's good. I think it's just simple enough, and it looks good, and it does the job that it needs to do, as opposed to making it too complicated. So yeah, there is a spot inside of this thing for people. You can sit people in the driver's hatches. You can sit people in the actual, actually, I'll just pull this off. You can sit in the actual tank too. There is an entire inside. And it's okay in my opinion. I think I did fairly good on the outside. I would say the inside is the spot that's a little more lacking, in the contrast of things. There is a driver's seat. It is in the middle, which is not my favorite. It's supposed to be a little offset so you can have 2 drivers or a gunner, on the other side. But I just couldn't, because when it came to sort of spacing stuff out and trying to put some, a Lego guy's arms are only so big and they get in the way of really thick walls. I just couldn't. So I just didn't bother, and I figured I want it to function a little more than be historical in that aspect. Because if I had him on a jumper plate or something to shift him over, he would be way too high. And he already has to lay down a little bit when he's in the tank. You have to kind of lay 2 people in here, in order to be able to like actually fit all in there and do as it's supposed to. But I don't know. It's okay. It's okay on the inside. It's great on the outside. It's okay on the inside. That's kind of the short answer. There's room for another crewman. Like I mentioned, you can fit 2 guys in the belly, 1 guy in the tower, in the turret. And it's fairly good. In the back here with this, removal of this little hinge piece, I made a little, Sherman engine. I don't know much about the Sherman engine, so I didn't really make something that was too historical. It was more just trying to use up the space. So I did do a tiny little engine feature that can be removed. I think it's okay. Again, the inside is okay, the outside is great. I might redo it and do it better, but that's kind of why I'm just sort of logging this here as sort of, this is my first attempt on a Sherman. I have never, ever built the M4 Sherman before. This is the very first one. And you guys are lucky to see the very first one, so here it is. Yeah, that's about it for the inside. I've got some shells in here. I can't imagine that they would store ammunition that close to an explosive engine, but I didn't really have anywhere else to do it, so that's where the ammunition is, and that's the hull. It's very simple. It does what it needs to do, and it's very rugged, just the same way the M4 Sherman was built altogether, which I kind of thought was a nice effect. The overall design of the tank is actually designed with pieces that are kind of more rudimentary as opposed to complex ones. And I wanted to do that kind of in a way so that it would be accessible if people really did want to build this, but ultimately for myself too. So if I wanted to build more of these Shermans, I would have to only get a few extra parts, and I wouldn't really have to like go scrounging for really, really rare or new pieces. Because I know there's a lot of new angled pieces and stuff where you can do things like this that are really complex. And I can't say I have a lot of those pieces. So I tried to go with something very simple. It's mostly just bricks, and then it's a couple of these little curved pieces. But a lot of these pieces sort of like across the back of here, like a 1x8 or whatever, could have just easily replaced that. So there's room for lots of modification, which I really appreciate. But it also is simple enough that it could be constructed with more rudimentary pieces, kind of substituted for anything that might be more complex. And it doesn't require complex pieces necessarily. And you can kind of just put it together with simpler than what you would guess, probably. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I never ever thought I would be building this build or sharing this video because I feel like this is a tricky thing to build. The funny thing is it's a simple thing to build, but so many people have combined Lego and the M4 Sherman and have built so many Shermans that I felt like I couldn't do it without looking like I copied something that somebody else did or retreading old ground, or because ultimately we all have the same pieces and we're all trying to build the same vehicle. So we end up with very similar products. But I'm proud of the Sherman because I feel like it is, number one, it's reasonably scaled to some degree, to a minifigure at least. And then on top of that, it doesn't look like any other Shermans I've seen. And I've seen quite a few. I try to be inspired by things but not copy them and work really hard to build something that's original. And I think that this kind of achieves that. I'm very, very proud of this build. It was a long process of building, a long process of brainstorming, especially with the wheels. But I think the end effect is really good. And if I find any better techniques to build on this, I'm definitely going to be doing update videos and Sherman variants and stuff and trying to just show off sort of my best building ability. But for right now, this is it. This is my M4 Sherman. Naturally, it's original design. I will thoroughly let people know on my channel if I ever feature something that somebody else built, but everything on my channel is my original design, and I think that this looks really good. It's nicely scaled, and it does what it needs to do, and it looks a lot like the iconic M4 Sherman tank from the Second World War. Naturally, I'm considering lots of Sherman variants and different ideas for that and different modifications. So those videos may be coming. I don't know. I'm not sure what is reasonable as far as all that's concerned. But here it is. This is my M4 Sherman, and I think that it looks beautiful, and I'm very, very pleased and proud to be able to present it and for people to get a chance to look at it and hopefully be inspired. So like I said towards the beginning of the video, I will be making tutorials on this. This Sherman will be, naturally it'll be for free for people to watch the instructions and be able to build, which I'm really excited to be able to share that too, because I think I'm really proud of this build and I think it really does what it needs to do as far as scale and functionality. And I'm really proud of the ability to be able to share that with people. So this is it. This is the little showcase here. This is the M4 Sherman, and the tutorial is coming soon. So stay tuned for all that.